Stand up.
Hey, it's Tuesday, the 17th of June. I am Pete. You are here, and I have got news, headlines, clips, and a great conversation with Aaron David Miller about everything that's happening in Israel and Iran. Hope you're doing all right. Happy to have you here. Thank you to the over 60 people who showed up at the Monday night Hangout. Hope to see you on Thursday night of this week, and you can connect anytime in the Discord platform here as a member of our amazing growing community. Hope to see you September 5th through 7th at Farm Jam in central New York, flying to Syracuse on September 5th. Hang out with us. It will be worth it. All right. Well, lots to talk about and lots that we talked about at the Monday night Hangout, but it's a shit show, as it usually is here in America, where Donald Trump is the president. Yesterday, he left the G7 early because ostensibly he was going to work on an Israel-Iran ceasefire, at least that is what the French president said. And then Trump went on his third-rate social media platform and denied leaving the G7 Leaders Summit early to broker a ceasefire between Israel and Iran. He rejected the French president's remarks in a late-night Truth Social post accusing the French president of, quote, publicity seeking. That's right. Last night, our Mad King posted, publicity seeking President Emmanuel Macron of France mistakenly said that I left the G7 summit in Canada to go back to D.C. to work on a ceasefire between Israel and Iran, wrote Trump. Wrong. He has no idea why I'm now on my way to Washington, but it certainly has nothing to do with a ceasefire. Much bigger than that, whether purposely or not. Emmanuel always gets it wrong. Stay tuned. So he calls out the French president, and he's letting us know it's not a ceasefire. It's much bigger than that. That coming on the heels of him posting before that everybody in Tehran should leave. That's right. He said Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. I said it over and over again. Everyone should immediately evacuate Tehran, which led all kinds of different people last night on social media to think that there was going to be some kind of major attack or even a nuclear bomb of some sort being used in Tehran or Iran. And it remains to be seen, obviously, but it is a super terrifying time to be alive in the world. I'm very happy to have you here joining me, though. It feels a little bit better to know that real people are out there watching and connecting and being concerned about it while also trying to make a difference in the world, in our country, in our community as well, which so many of you I know are. I do think, by the way, it's really important, just wanted to mention this, that there are a few very influential commentators on the right that are questioning the Trump administration's actions and roles leading up to potential higher escalation, a larger, worse war, and getting involved in that war. Tucker Carlson yesterday went on Steve Bannon and was highly critical of the idea, as was a very influential libertarian guy named Dave Smith. I'm going to play clips of both of them talking about it, but I do think that matters. And Tucker Carlson also basically quarreling now with Mark Levin, his former colleague at Fox News, over this issue. And I think it's important, and I'll share those clips coming up, but watch for more of a fracture or fission within the right-wing media atmosphere over a potential larger United States role in a Middle East war. Also, look for influential members of Congress to be against that, too. Although I'm sure many of them will get on board and think it's a fantastic thing. Why not? But I just thought that's worth mentioning. Also, let's get to all of the other headlines that probably got undercovered as a result of these top stories that I've already mentioned. Of course, Minnesota continues to mourn the horrific assassination of two politicians, two others, well, I should say, and their spouses, I guess. And the only thing I really want to say about that at the moment is that this guy who committed these crimes, allegedly, his name is Vance Bolter. He is a Christian nationalist, as far as I can tell. I mean, Jeff Charlotte's writing about it, and there's plenty of data being put together about where he went to school, this religious school, and what he believed and what motivated him. He's not being called that. He's not being seen as that by many in the mainstream media for any number of reasons. But I'm going to go ahead and jump onto it and call him a white Christian, nationalist, extremist, or terrorist. I mean, this guy struck terror to Minnesota, and it isn't going away, that fear. I mean, absolutely will chill the motivation and inspiration that many people, certainly on the left, have for running for office, for example, or those who are currently serving are going to reconsider where they live or any number of security precautions that they are now going to want to take. I mean, it just reverberates throughout our culture, society, and anybody that is in or around progressive politics. So I just want to mention, I think it's pretty clear what his motivations were. We will know more, I'm sure. We will learn more specifically. The man was captured alive, and at some point he's going to speak. We'll see whether or not it's in a courtroom or elsewhere, but I think that's where I'm at right now, and I wish that more in the media would consider that, because if this guy were Muslim or brown, I think he would be being treated far differently and be being seen far differently by the right and by everybody else in the, quote, mainstream or moderate media, corporate media. So that's what I have to say about that. That dude is America's Al-Qaeda. Okay, well, here are a few other stories. Headlines I think you'll probably want to know about. 36 more countries may be added to Trump's travel ban. Yes, that's right. Our Mad King is giving the nations 60 days to fix, quote, concerns. According to a State Department cable, the president already imposed a full or partial ban on citizens of 19 countries. Read more about it, well, everywhere that is reporting that. A federal judge ruled that our Mad King's cuts to the NIH were illegal and said that throughout his career he had, quote, never seen government racial discrimination like this. How about that? Judge accused the Trump administration of discriminating against racial minorities and LGBTQ people and ordered the government to restore much of the funding to National Institutes of Health's grants. This is a pretty big, important story and decision. The judge, by the way, is a Reagan appointee with 40 years of experience, so that says a lot, him saying that. Also in legal news, the American Bar Association is suing the Trump administration, seeking an order that would bar the White House from pursuing what the ABA called a campaign of intimidation against major law firms. The lawsuit filed in federal court, Washington, D.C. yesterday said the administration violated the U.S. Constitution in a series of executive orders targeting law firms over their past clients and lawyers they hired. So that's a significant legal development. A federal judge also ruled Friday that President Trump lacked the power to fire the 3 Democratic commissioners on a 5-person Consumer Product Safety Commission, reversing their abrupt dismissals from last month and setting up a fresh test of presidential power to control independent agencies. Also, the Mad King's nominee to head the Federal Aviation Administration apparently has been lying about his history with flying, specifically as a pilot. He described himself in his official biography as being certified to fly aircraft commercially. But records examined by Politico show that he does not hold any commercial license to fly. So it'll be real interesting to see what happens with the former CEO of Republic Airways, Brian Bedford. He's the nominee to head the FAA that's been apparently lying about whether or not he himself has a commercial pilot's license. Also, I thought this was important. The Voice of America told about 75 employees, please come back to work immediately amid escalating military action between Iran and Israel. Most of the staffers restored from months-long administrative leave were from the Persian news division of the government-funded broadcaster that obviously covers what's going on in Iran. And one of the most important stories yesterday is what can only be described as, I guess, a reversal on our aspiring autocrat's decision to pause most raids targeting farms and hospitality workers. It took everybody most in the White House by surprise last week. It came after this intense lobbying by his agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins, who was relaying a growing sense of alarm from farmers and agriculture groups who were uneasy about his immigration crackdowns. And the New York Times reporting and several others say that she wasn't the first person to try to get his message through to the president, nor was it the first time that she'd spoken about it. But the president became persuaded there, and he posted a message on social media that took this uncharacteristically softer tone toward the very immigrants he has spent much of his political career demonizing immigrants in the farming and hospitality industries, he wrote, are very good long-time workers. Changes are coming. Reporting says that some influential Trump donors who learned about the post began reaching out to Trump, urging him to include the restaurant sector and any directive to spare undocumented workers from enforcement. So they announced this decision. They made a decision and talked with senior officials at ICE, sent an email. Agents were to hold on all worksite enforcement investigations and operations in agriculture, restaurants, and operating hotels. How effective was this order? Well, not very, apparently, because now new reporting as of yesterday from the Washington Post says that after Trump's post and comments to reporters, a DHS official told agents to pause raids on agriculture, including meat packing plants as well as restaurants and hotels. But then this past Sunday, DHS leadership suggested a reversal was coming because, as journalists write, the White House did not support the new policy. And then in a call yesterday morning, officials from ICE told agents to continue immigration raids at the businesses Trump had said he was going to protect. Heather Cox Richardson writes, this shift seems as if the White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller, a white nationalist who insists that the U.S. must deport 1 million immigrants this year, is determining White House policies, just as he did on the Signal chat about the military strikes on the Houthis in Yemen, when his statement that Trump wanted to strike appeared to shut down any further debate of the question. So it's hard to know what's happening. We just have to depend on just reporting and activists who are watching these areas, these sites, these work sites, as well as those who run these different restaurants and farms, employers themselves who never seem to get cracked down on. We've got to learn more about all of that. I want to learn more about how they're able to get employed, how they're able to be targeted, and this just a lot of stories coming out about people who are Trump supporters that voted for Trump and now are seeing their businesses be depleted or go belly up as a result of all of their workers being taken from them by Trump. So, I mean, it's a sad story for a lot of reasons, and it's also hard to have compassion for people, obviously, who voted for Trump and now are seeing the obvious consequences, exactly what he said he was going to do. And they said, well, he's not going to do that to us. Really? Well, it's also being targeted, certainly in mostly blue states, we should mention as well. And 2 of the 3 states that have the most undocumented people living and working in them, guess where? Florida and Texas. And it doesn't seem like they're being targeted in the same ways. Do I have that right? Okay. Well, those are your headlines. And now it's time to get to the second segment of the news segment. It's the clip show. Time for the clip show. Some of the audio clips, sound bites from around the world of media yesterday, from the corporate media, the cable media, the online media. I've got as much as I can every day here on the show for you. And I want to start with the brewing civil war on the right over the issue of the United States' role in the Middle East war, Israel versus Iran right now. And let's start with Tucker Carlson, who's on Steve Bannon, savaging both his former employee, Fox News, and his former colleague there, Mark Levin. And he's got that really weird, cringy laugh that he does that he knows he's doing. And it's worth watching this because Steve Bannon looking at Tucker Carlson, like Bannon thinks that Carlson is a nut job too, which I think is is hilarious. All right, here it is. Sorry I have to play this for you, but I think it's worth hearing that these guys are not on board with this Middle East war. Or who knows what they actually believe or think. I don't think they have any morals at all. I mean, Tucker Carlson is certainly on board with Russia and the Russian invasion into Ukraine, but this is the ship that he wants to sail on right now, and I think it's good if there's a debate, a discussion on the right about this, and especially if Trump loses support as a result.
I actually really love Trump. I think he's a deeply humane, kind person.
I know, hard to hear. It gets a little better. Deeply humane and kind person. He is the least of those, but okay, back to it.
And I am saying this because I'm really afraid that my country's going to be further weakened by this. I think we're going to see the end of American empire.
Oh.
Obviously, other nations would like to see that, and this is a perfect way to scuttle the USS America on the shoals of Iran. But it's also going to end, I believe, Trump's presidency and effectively end it. And
wow.
And so that's why I'm saying this.
What do you mean by that? That's coming from you. That's
look, I knew Bush. I knew George W. Bush. We had, family connections to Bush. I knew Bush personally. I still see Bush sometimes. And, of course, he hates me, and he does because I criticized him on Iraq. And that war is the sum total, from a historical perspective, of his administration. But I knew him, and he had all kinds of plans for the things that he wanted to do. But once domestically,
right,
to improve the country.
Right.
And you may agree or disagree, but in his mind, he wasn't just about the invasion of Iraq in March of 2000.
Oh, no. He was going to redo Social Security.
100%,
He had all types of. He was going to take care of the entitlements issue.
And he really thought it was going to work.
Yep.
And you could laugh at that or whatever, but the point is, the second you get enmeshed in a real war, not a fake, let's go bomb the villagers and declare success, though we don't even have a good track record. Why are the Houthis still there? There's a whole other question,
right,
which is how prepared is the U.S. military for a real conflict? And the answer is totally unprepared. Scary unprepared. I don't think people understand that.
Well, by the looks of that parade, they look pretty unprepared. They're using old tanks and Revolutionary War outfits. I don't think they're going to use those in the war. But why is he saying they're unprepared? I don't know. But that's him saying that. By the way, just a quick note, Bush's domestic policy agenda, he was going to reform Social Security. They made it seem like if not for the Iraq War, he would have gotten that done. Just to be clear, they took a vote on privatizing Social Security, and he lost. They didn't want to do it. Republicans got sheepish when it came down to it. I'm almost positive they took a vote on it, or he decided not to have a vote on it because it wasn't going to pass. So he failed at trying to convince Americans, and he went around the country trying to convince Americans that we needed to privatize Social Security, because that's obviously a conservative's dream, to get all that money for themselves. Whole personal responsibility idea there. Regardless, it wasn't popular. Social Security is popular. So he failed there. And as far as getting our entitlements under control, he also created Medicare Prescription Part D, the Drug Improvement and Modernization Act of 2003. Go look it up. It's a prescription drug benefit for Medicare beneficiaries. And he paid for both the Iraq War and the new Medicare Part D on a credit card. They didn't raise taxes for that. That is why Bush created such huge budget deficits and national debt. Those two things. So just to be clear, a little revisionist history in the conversation between Bannon and Tucker Carlson that I'm now going to go back to, believe it or not, because I hate Mark Levin and I love Tucker Carlson bashing him, saying he's no good on TV right here.
Levin's the funniest because he's terrible on TV. And again, I never had any problems with him at Fox. He kind of controls Hannity in this weird way. I never understood what that was about. I never really cared to learn. Sean was great to me, always nice, and so was Levin. So I just kind of stayed away. But they didn't want to put him on TV because he's screechy and he's just not a calming presence. Mark Levin on TV!
Oh my God.
Unless you're literally floating in and out of consciousness and the attendant has taken the remote to go have a cigarette, you're going to flip the channel when Mark Levin gets on TV. It's like listening to your ex-wife scream about alimony payments. It's
wow,
not appealing.
Wow.
So they wouldn't put him on TV. And then, Sean pushed and they gave him some kind of weekend show that nobody watched. Now I don't have a TV, but someone was just who owns a TV was just telling me that he's all over prime time. So what is that? That's not by popular acclaim. That's not like their viewer surveys. We need a lot more Mark Levin. Less Jesse Waters, more Mark Levin. Mark Levin! What they're doing is what they always do, which is just turning up the propaganda hose to full blast and just trying to, knock elderly Fox viewers off their feet and make them submit to a new war.
All right. Yeah, Ben had to get in there. Not to defend Fox, but that's what they all do. Also, he created the propaganda hose at Fox. I just love his impression of Levin and that he's attacking him and that he says he doesn't have a TV. I bet he has a TV in every room of every house that he has, and I bet he watches Fox News nonstop. Oh, no. My friends tell me I don't have a TV, but people who do tell me he's on all the time. It's because you're watching him all the time. All right, that's enough of that. Let's get to something better. How about, well, this isn't better, but it is on Fox News, and it is Senator John Thune on Fox News talking to, I think, Martha McCallum, trying to deny that the big bad bill that the Senate is certainly is marking up right now that the House sent to them, he's trying to say it doesn't create debts and deficits. So let's see how that goes.
Today you have the Committee for a Responsible Budget coming out and saying that, in its current form as written, it will add $15 trillion to the debt. We're already at $37 trillion. What do you say to people who look at that and say, I thought we were going in the other direction? What happened to a more responsible budget?
Well, we are, and this will reduce the deficit, not increase it. And the reason for that is, one, we are going to have the biggest spending reduction in history. But secondly, all the other things I mentioned, Martha, are going to generate growth in the economy. And when the economy is growing and expanding and people are investing, you get more government revenue. And the standard rule of thumb is for about 1% increase in GDP, in growth in the economy, you get about $3 trillion of additional tax revenue. So the goal here is pro-growth policies that will get the economy growing and expanding, coupled with more fiscal austerity, fiscal responsibility. There'll be $1.5 trillion to $2 trillion in spending cuts in here, biggest spending reduction in America, in American history. And I think those two things together will mean that we will be reducing and getting that deficit trending down instead of trending up. What a lot of those folks don't do is they don't take into consideration what happens when you put pro-growth policies in place. And that is you get economic growth and you get more government revenue.
Yeah,
so
they score,
most of them are using static models.
They score without taking into account the growth side of the equation, and we've seen that for a long time. We'll see.
All right, exactly. She comes in and tries to give him a little bit cover. We know exactly what happens. Bush did this, and Trump did this, and states do this. When you cut taxes, but you don't cut spending at the equivalent rates, you create budget deficits and debts. You don't grow the tax base to make up the difference. It's never happened. It doesn't happen. If it's happened, let me know. Let me know where it's happened. We know exactly this is a zombie lie, and it just won't go away, and they just keep doing this, and it creates more and more debts and deficits, and every single independent agency and economist is saying that's exactly what's going to happen. Only the Republicans who are trying to pass these bills, even Elon Musk obviously, is saying it's going to happen. All right, let me bring you something different. Here is Tim Miller of The Bulwark talking to Terry Moran. This is not that important, and I think Terry Moran is kind of a douche. I'm not going to lie to you. I think this is a little bit the whole thing. Terry Moran, ABC News, who got fired for or they didn't renew his contract or whatever they're calling it, for his tweet, for his post about Stephen Miller having hatred in his heart. I mean, I think he saw the writing on the wall with his job, corporate media, ABC News. And anyway, here it is. I think it's a little bit not great faith. I'll say, I don't know if it's bad faith or good faith, but it's not great faith, I feel, what he's done here. But hey, you decide. The host, Tim Miller, asked him, why did you send that? What was going on when you sent that post?
Put the kids to bed. We were up for a little while. And it was not a rock and roll wild night. It was a normal family night. And then, got into bed and I thought, what was that? And I typed it out and I looked at it and I thought, that's true. And I hit send.
I mean, it's you got to forgive people who think that it might have been a drunk tweet. I mean, are you usually popping off at midnight?
No,
That's Stephen. Is it a concern that you're thinking about Stephen Miller at midnight? I mean, I guess maybe it says something about the state of the country that you're thinking about Stephen Miller at midnight.
I believe so. It was more the moment that we're in, which he represents in such a vivid and, to me, quite disturbing way. I will say this. I looked at it. I thought, okay, what is that? And I thought, that's a description of the public man, that I'm describing him.
Yeah. I mean, there's no lies detected from my side of things, but I'm an opinion podcaster, and you do got to admit, you went a little hard in the paint there with that, talking about how his hatreds are his spiritual nourishment. So, I guess it does leave people to wonder, were you and Stephen Miller fighting? Was there a news story that prompted it? Was it something out of your Trump interview? I mean, given your background as a newsman, obviously you had a perspective, but that's hot. That's hot material.
It's way hot. And I wish I had a better story, Tim. It was something that was in my heart and mind. And I would say I used very strong language deliberately because I felt, and it wasn't any, you see him all the time doing the same, spitting venom and lies into our debate, degrading our public discourse, debasing it, and using the power of the White House and what he's been given to grind us down in that bile.
Yeah.
And that's very disturbing to me. I'm actually, not that liberal. I'm like a lot of people, some conservative, some liberal. But there was something about that and what it represented about that movement and Trump himself that I felt, to describe it accurately, needed that language.
Yeah, it's interesting because it does feel like it was something that was weighing on you. I don't have it in front of me, but like maybe a week before that, you'd sent kind of a long tweet about immigration. And it wasn't a lefty tweet, really. It started with, a comment about how, we need to be able to have self-government and have our borders. Here it is. It's like people have a right to say who comes into our country and at what pace they're admitted. That's not racism. It's self-government. By turning migration into a moral demand, a matter of right rather than policy, advocates have ignited a backlash. And this was you like a week before. Then you go on to talk about how we are seeing a bunch of people who are being racist in the ways that they are treating immigration. So, like, there's something about this issue that has been obviously noodling in your head for a while.
Yeah. I would say that, I'm a member of the most despised political tribe in America. I'm a proud centrist, but what I mean by that is, I guess I'm old, and the viciousness and the intolerance that you feel when we argue politics. Somebody asked me the other day in connection with all this, so what are your politics? And I said, well, I guess I'm a Hubert Humphrey Democrat. I'm old enough to remember them. And, get practical things done that people need in a decent way and stand up for what's right. And that is my politics. So someone like Stephen Miller, in my judgment, and in my observation, which is what reporters do, is degrading all that and is a danger. And that's what was in my heart.
All right. I don't know. What do you think of that? Maybe I wasted your time, but I thought it was interesting when I heard it. So that's my general standard. Is it interesting and important? Is the top standard? Well, I think this is both those. This is Senator Sheldon Whitehouse talking about the insanity of our Department of Justice and our justice system, federal justice system, in terms of the way that it's looking at Trump supporters and everybody else. I think that's the way I'll say it. Here he is.
When the Department of Justice can't tell the difference in a violent rioter assaulting federal law enforcement, and some get pardons, and other get Marines and tanks and charges, something has gone wrong with the prosecution standards over at the Department of Justice. And when it's the MAGA ones who are getting the pardons, it's pretty clear what the hell is going on in the MAGA weaponized Department of Justice.
All right. Well done, Senator Sheldon Whitehouse. Now let's go to Congressman Andy Levin. He was on a CNN panel. There was a Republican congressman on there as well, but they were talking about patriotism, and I like the way that he's couching it, and I think that this is exactly how we should frame it. I don't love that word, but if you're one of the most patriotic things you can do is protest.
Final word. Say that yesterday was a massive outpouring of patriotism. Yeah. I couldn't disagree with Brad more. There were over 70 events in Michigan. Evidently, there were 1,500 people out in Petoskey, in Emmett County up north, voted overwhelmingly for President Trump. All across the country, people came out and said, no kings. Brad, what's more patriotic than that?
We do. We have no Kings Day every year. It's July the 4th. We celebrate our independence from
Kings. Well, you know what? In America, you can come out on any dang day of the year and express your opinion, and that's the most American thing of all.
Thank you for...
All right, there you go. I thought that was pretty good, and I think that's how we should be talking about it. Here is Mehdi Hassan and Piers Morgan on Iran, Israel. I thought this was pretty interesting, and I wanted to share it with you.
What we saw on Thursday night from Israel was not a preemptive strike. It was a preventive strike, which is illegal under international law. It's what George Bush and the neocons claimed the Iraq war was against Saddam Hussein, which you and I opposed, rightly so. And that IAEA report does not expose an imminent nuclear threat. It says what you just said it says. It says that they haven't been cooperating very well. It says their level of cooperation has been, quote, less than satisfactory. It says some of their technical answers about their program have lacked credibility. It says they've impeded some of the inspectors. It says that they were working on some kind of military program pre-2003, which is what U.S. intelligence has also said. Those are all bad things, Piers. You and I can both agree those are bad things, and Iran should not be doing those things. And the IAEA board voted to say they're in breach of their obligations. But that's not an imminent nuclear threat. The report does not say Iran poses an imminent nuclear threat. Your tweet was wrong on Friday.
I think it's as I just said. When it says 60% enrichment of uranium, it's the next stage that somebody who wants to create a nuclear bomb, right? So imminent, look, what do I mean by imminent? As I said in the panel, it can be weeks, months, a year, whatever, but they've reached a stage of enrichment. No, it can't, Piers. But they have the capability to take it to another stage and create a bomb.
Yes. So let's find more agreement between us. I agree. That is capability, right? They have enough highly enriched uranium to build up to 9 bombs, I believe. They have 400 kilograms of uranium.
So that is an imminent threat if it's in the wrong hands, right? We can agree on that.
No, it's not.
But why not?
No, because unfortunately having a civil nuclear program is totally fine. Having enriched uranium is fine. The issue is if you weaponize it and have a weapons program. And Tulsi Gabbard, no friend of radical Islam, Donald Trump's director of national intelligence, said in March that the U.S. intelligence community's consensus view is that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon, does not have a nuclear weapon, has not authorized a nuclear weapons program. The IAEA, Piers, in that report, you must have seen the line in their summary, said there are no credible indications of an ongoing, undeclared, structured nuclear program. Even the IAEA says there's no nuclear weapons program. Their boss, the IAEA chief, Piers, said last week, you cannot attack nuclear facilities in Iran. So, no, it's not an imminent threat. And under international law, Piers, this is the key point. If a weapon is a year away, you cannot say we're under imminent threat. That does not give you a right to self-defense. Otherwise, everyone in the world would go around just bombing people. You and I oppose Russia's invasion of Ukraine. We agree on that, right? Putin claimed that Ukraine would one day attack Russia with NATO support. That's why I'm doing it. That was a bullshit argument. You and I rejected Putin's bullshit argument in Ukraine. You and I have rejected the Israeli bullshit argument now in Gaza. You don't believe what they're saying about Gaza. I don't know why you're believing them on this when you were rightly calling out the bullshit from the UK and the US in 2003 over Iraq. Saddam Hussein was not an imminent threat, and Iran was not an imminent threat, and Israel attacked them illegally last week.
All right. Well, that's the way that Mehdi Hassan sees it. Piers Morgan mostly agreeing with him on it. What do you think? All right. Now let's get to one more clip that I brought I thought was important. This is the governor, of course, of Minnesota, Tim Walz, saying what exactly needs to be said, but I feel like I've heard this so many times before, and I'm not sure that anything necessarily changes. It's still, the governor has to say it, so here it is.
Country where we watch violence erupt. This cannot be the norm. It cannot be the way that we deal with our political differences. Now's the time for us to recommit to the core values of this country. And each and every one of us can do it. Talk to a neighbor rather than arguing. Debate an issue. Shake hands. Find common ground.
All right, those are all the news clips. Your comedy is coming up, but I also like to slip this in different times in the news segment. This is Kevin Richburg of Slate Hill, Edible Forest, longtime listener, huge supporter, subscriber, very good friend of mine. You know him from our Hangouts, and I play these clips almost every day that he sends them. It is him letting us know, reminding us that there's one story that matters more than all of the rest of the stories. And I warn you, today's is filled with extra F words, and as always, Kevin Richburg channels all of our rage and anger just perfectly.
The only story that matters is that President Trump is an authoritarian. He's a fucking authoritarian, and everyone fucking knows it. Over the weekend, Trump penned a grammatically challenged missive straight out of an Adolf Hitler's For Dummies Cliff Notes. Nothing will stop us from executing our mission, he said. What the fuck? Then he went on to basically set out the rationale for a civil war. Again, what the fuck? He insulted American cities in the harshest terms possible, dehumanized his political opponents, and he screamed the term remigration, which is a euphemism for ethnic cleansing. The only story that matters is that authoritarian dictators are not fit to be president. Journalists, get your fucking heads out of your fucking asses.
Thank you, Kevin, as always. Slate Hill Edible Forest. Go check it out and join us there September 5th through 7th. SlateHillEdibleForest.com, by the way. Check out Kevin's farm. And he's not always like that, just when he's on, right? Okay, let's get to some comedy, shall we? Let's check in with Jon Stewart, who's hosting The Daily Show on Monday night, last night.
But let me just say this to start off. Just to start off. Weekend. This weekend. Terrible. Again. I'm so sorry. Friday. We were in the office on Friday. We planned a very fun show. It was going to be light on. We were going to come out here, talk about little Kim Jong-Trump and his big military parade / quinceañera and how it meant that we all live in North Korea now, and all the hyperbole of this massive display of American military power really butted up against what the parade actually was, which was this.
Then they show the video of the tank squeaking.
Was that tank squeaking? We have $1 trillion budget for the military. Nobody's got WD-40. Nobody. Squeaky tank. Nobody can just go in there. This was less a show of overwhelming force and more like a military museum getting in its steps. It was actually kind of nice and fun. It took you through the history of the Army, from its days of tri-cornered hats and muskets to its brave future as robot dog walkers. Hey. Who's going to clean up these ball bearings? You just going to...
And then I watched the monologues of Jimmy Kimmel and Colbert, and they all did the same, almost the exact same joke. It was almost exact. They all picked on the tank squeaking and mentioned oiling it. And then Kimmel and Colbert both pointed to one of the soldiers who was marching and holding a drone above his head instead of it flying around. Listen.
This is exciting. We're now one step closer to finding out which winning town, either Indianapolis or Oklahoma City, will host a much bigger parade than our president's G.I. Joe themed birthday party this weekend. Will that be fun? So, on Saturday, Trump had this, his much anticipated stupid Sweet 16, disguised as a tribute to the U.S. Army he bone spurred his way out of. After all the hype and money, somewhere around $50 million. It was boring. It was basically a $50 million version of when a 5-year-old shows you every car in his Hot Wheels collection. We paid for most of it, but he brought in some corporate sponsors, including the UFC, a crypto company, and Scott's Miracle Grow, which is the product Trump uses on his head. There were flyovers, there were comb-overs, the whole thing. Generalissimo Ballpark Franco had more than 6,000 troops on call to march for him.
And then Kimmel shows a video of the soldier carrying the drone.
They know those things fly, right? I mean, he's holding the pizza like it's a pizza. Who had the pepperoni, huh? There were some sweet moments at the parade, like this child learning to operate a bazooka. You know, after all his talk about how this wasn't a birthday party for him, it kind of seemed like a birthday party for him.
And then Kimmel shows the audience singing happy birthday to Trump at the dumb parade.
They wrapped his new iPad in a flag. It was a lot of fun. What a birthday. It wasn't just, and they gave him a fireworks show on top of that. There's Sleepy Don taking it all in. And in fairness, that's as close as he gets to being able to sleep with his wife, so he took the opportunity.
All right, finally, there you go. That's it. And now, finally, listen to Colbert make almost the exact same jokes. I'm not saying any of them stole from each other. It's just kind of obvious jokes. Parallel thinking is how I always put it. But still, I think this was kind of fun.
I tell you, I am in a great mood tonight because this weekend was Father's Day, and Daddy got just what he wanted. No one came to Trump's big, stupid birthday parade. Isn't that pleasant? No. So no one came, though, of course, the White House claims that 250,000 people attended. So now, apparently, 250,000 people looks like this. They must be really good at hide and seek. It was... MAGA stands for Make America Grass Again, I guess. Whoa! It was so, thank you, Matt. That was so sparsely attended that these poor troops were forced to march past empty bleachers. You guys, I don't think our parents came to our show. It's not fair to the soldiers. They've got to be there. It wasn't just the low turnout. It also lacked a certain showmanship, which is surprising because we heard it had tanks and stuff. But in reality, this is what you got. We may have won WW2, but this weekend we lost the battle of WD-40. There you go. But that tank... I love that sound, though. That tank was so slow, it was later lapped by a tumbleweed. And then by Joe Biden. After that, the parade took to the sky. I'm sorry, took to this guy holding a drone. It is going to blow his mind when he finds out that that thing can fly.
All right, there you go. I thought that was great. You know, you don't want to give late-night comedians just hand them material, and that parade was exactly that. So, of course, they're going to come up with some of the similar jokes there, and of course, the poor guy that is carrying that drone is going to get made fun of, and everybody else. It's embarrassing. It was embarrassing for our military, in my opinion. But there you go. That is all I've got for you in terms of headlines and clips. I hope you appreciated it. Thank you very much for supporting me with a paid subscription. We have been doing this for over 4 years now, 2 Hangouts a week now, and I just want to thank you. I'm so grateful to everybody who supports me and this show and allows me to do it each and every day, and that I'm getting it up in the morning earlier, and there doesn't seem to be too much complaints. I've been trying to get it up by 7 a.m., but I keep trying to get it up by 6. That's always the goal. But let's get now to my guest. Let me know what you think of all of everything I just did and said. I always want to hear from you. standupwithpete@gmail.com. Okay, yesterday I caught up with Aaron David Miller early in the morning. He, of course, is a Middle East analyst, author, negotiator. He's a senior fellow now at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, where he's focused on, as he has been his whole life, U.S. foreign policy. He was Vice President for New Initiatives at the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars. Before that, he's been an advisor to both Republican and Democrat secretaries of state, global affairs analyst at CNN. He's written a bunch of books, and he is my friend. We are friends. I love Aaron, and I love this conversation, and you can watch it on YouTube, youtube.com/standupwithpete if you'd like. And here we go right now. Go follow him, by the way, on social media and support his work at Carnegie. And here we go. Aaron David Miller, let's do it. Yeah, Aaron David Miller, early in the morning. Thank you so much for joining me. I want to talk to you, obviously, about the Middle East. It's so great to see you, my friend. We've talked so much over the years and become friends, and I have so much respect for you and your thoughts on everything. Before we get to the obvious Middle East, Iran, Israel that I want to talk to you about, how do you articulate the moment that we are in?
I mean, I think we've been through crises before in this country. The greatest, obviously, Civil War. I tried to explain to a millennial ago why 1968 was a terrible year for America. In fact, worse than this one, worse than any year in any of the Trump administrations. Thousands of Americans were dying, thousands in Vietnam. You had the assassination of Martin Luther King and Bobby Kennedy. You had urban riots with a severity that goes beyond anything we've seen here. You had Chicago in 1968, the Republican National Convention. But we've never been here before. We've never had a president who sought to aggrandize presidential power. We've never had a president who has no capacity to turn the M in me upside down so it becomes a W in we. Everything that he does is subordinated either to his grievances, his financial interests, his political interests, and it's being done with a cruelty and an unkindness that is really quite remarkable. I mean, I'm a product of the system, right? Full confession. I had 27 years working for Republican and Democratic secretaries of state. My friends who are still at think tanks that are literally the Wilson Center, where I worked for 10 years, has been completely zeroed out. U.S. Institute for Peace has been dismantled, trying to make a recovery. VOA, which is not American propaganda, but it's become a source and a beacon to so many oppressed and repressed peoples abroad, is under unbelievable assault. USAID, providing extraordinary support. I mean, PEPFAR alone, George W. Bush's, I think, greatest contribution. You could see the deaths of 500,000 people as a consequence of dried up funding. And I just, for people of a certain age, that would be me. I'm not sure it's coming back the way it used to be. Now, are reforms necessary? Absolutely. But not the way this is being done. And it's being done not just to government, the universities, science, law firms. I mean, it's an effort literally to destroy. And even though there are people in the Trump administration that have ideological views of the America they want, I mean, the wreckage without an alternative creation that would benefit the vast majority of people in this country, it's really bad, Pete, really bad.
Yeah. I really appreciate your perspective on all of it. Just say one more word about USAID or the importance of soft power, because, everything in America now led by Trump has to be very, quote, masculine or fake masculine or tough or strong or military parades. But as you know, as well as anybody in this country, the Department of State, the U.S. Institute of Peace, USAID, and what is called soft power has helped this country accomplish more than the vast majority of Americans know for about a penny of your taxes.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a small percentage of the foreign assistance budget, and it does such good. And USAID needed to be reformed. There's no question about it. But they provided invaluable, as you put it, soft power. I mean, we haven't always lived up to our values. Let's be very clear. I mean, human rights and democracy promotion has, in my judgment, I worked for Republicans and Democrats and voted for them as well, has never been the centerpiece. But our values, the way we want to be and hope to be, the way we project ourselves in the world, hearts and minds and hearts, it's a critical part. And, it's not enough, frankly, to be feared. You want a country that is respected and admired as well. And I mean, our adversaries are rubbing their hands together. They cannot believe, the Russians and the Chinese, even with Trump's tariffs, cannot believe how seamlessly this man bonds with authoritarian powers and autocrats. And our allies are in a state of incredible disarray and confusion about whether or not Joe Biden was simply a temporary return to multilateral diplomacy, respect for allies, try to find a balance of interest that respects ours and theirs, rather than to turn life into a zero-sum game in Mr. Trump's world where I want to win. Winning is everything.
Right.
So, no, I mean, and again, I worry that this is, even should the Democrats take the House in 2026, even if they return to power, to office in 2028, stuff is being broken here. That's going to be very, very difficult. I want to just make one additional point.
Sure.
Quickly for a young audience. I mean, admittedly, I'm old, right? I just turned 76. The reality is, America is not a big ATM machine where you only get to make withdrawals. You got to make deposits. And the deposits are the responsibilities and obligations of citizenship, not just voting, but a kind of identification with America as an enterprise, as a country worth preserving with some affection and respect. It's okay to be a citizen of the world. It's okay to fight for the rights of an individual community. That's inclusion. That needs to happen. But I think if we're going to turn this around, particularly for the future generation, we need young Americans who have a concept of a country they want to live in and identify that way and work toward that end. Sorry for the lecture.
No, I could listen to you talk. I always want to hear your thoughts on all of it.
Yeah.
And by the way, happy Father's Day. So I want to hear your thoughts on everything.
Back at you.
Just before we get to what's going on right now in the Middle East with Israel and Iran, I just wanted to go back because context is so important in all of these situations. Certainly this one. Back in 2015, I was talking to you on my show about the very important, long-fought, negotiated Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA, an international agreement that was reached between Iran and several world powers. It was hard fought. John Kerry, I remember talking a lot about the work that he and so many others did and how close it got to falling apart. The primary goal, of course, to prevent Iran from developing a nuclear weapon. The easiest way to summarize it that most people across the board say is, well, it wasn't perfect. We didn't get everything we wanted out of it, but it would have prevented them from getting a weapon at least for a while longer, and that is preferred than war. Well, just take me back to 2015 and that agreement that President Trump in his first term broke immediately, as everything that Obama touched.
Yeah, 2018, he pulled out for reasons that have more to do with domestic politics and his own personal preferences and grievances. And look, I described the JCPOA, first of all, getting anything done, reaching any agreement, if you're a U.S. mediator, is really, really hard. This agreement was functional. It constrained Iran's ability to enrich uranium. It constrained the time between where we are now and its breakout, that is to say, acquiring enough fissile material to make a nuclear weapon, and then going through the elaborate process of absolutely weaponizing. It imposed pretty good monitoring restrictions through the IAEA, but it was flawed as well. And the problem, there are no good deals with Iran. There are no good deals with the Islamic Republic. And right. that I think is the real problem here. The best you can do, the Israelis are testing that assumption. The best you could do, I've argued, in as long as you have an Islamic regime, this one that has that is acquisitive, it wants to acquire, or at least be in a position, I would put it, as being one screwdriver's turn away from a nuclear weapon. So 6 months, a year and a half, until what we've seen today, it seemed to me that was a sensible, rational strategy, because it occurred to me that even if you used military forces, the Israelis are doing now, to cripple, wound, or even destroy Iran's nuclear program, and even if the United States became involved with the weapons, B-2 Spirit bombers, which carry these massive ordnance penetrators, the bunker busters, it would only delay the inevitable search, particularly after a strike, and it might even incentivize the Iranians to actually produce a weapon. And I think we're going to watch to see whether that proposition is going to be tested. I don't think the Israelis can destroy the nuclear program. Once scientific knowledge enters the head of a scientific community, how do you extract it?
Right.
And I don't know. I think there are undeclared Iranian nuclear sites that we don't know about, that the Israelis don't know about. That's part of the problem. Plus, the Israelis don't have the necessary tools to do what we could do. And even if, I'm not predicting this, I think Trump does not want to get into this, but even if the U.S. entered the war, I don't think even we could fundamentally eradicate the program. The Israelis may have other things in mind, though, Pete. I mean, regime change, what does that actually mean, and how do they think these actions in coming days and weeks? And by the way, the trajectory of this thing is not going to be measured in days. We're talking here weeks. You and I are going to be having this conversation, I suspect, 2 weeks from now. We can talk about why that is. But I think that even if the United States got into this, I'm not predicting it, but even if they did, it would be a severe blow to the program. But unless circumstances were created so that the government of Iran, which abuses, represses, prosecutes, imprisons, tortures its own citizens, were somehow replaced, and only the Iranian people would have the final say in how that is going to be done, you are not going to fix the problem. I'm not recommending regime change. I wish there were another regime in Iran. I don't think we have the capacity to do that. And I don't see how you get from where we are now to that point, if that's what the Israelis hope to set the stage for.
My understanding, having watched what's happened in Iran over the past 10, 15 years especially, is that regime change probably has to come from within, and even that has been, so far, it has failed. We've seen these revolutions over the years, in 2009, a couple of years ago, but Israel striking Iran, like every other country, creates a kind of nationalism, doesn't it? Doesn't it create support for the regime, potentially? I mean, I don't understand how a military strike from Israel or any other foreign country would create regime change here or ever in any other country. It doesn't seem to work that way in modern.
I mean, I think that's right. I mean, the Arab Spring was, in some respects, an example of a situation where you had, tethered to social media and corruption, dysfunction of the regime, you had popular protests, which essentially faced Tunisia and Egypt. Those are the two classic examples. And even when those regimes changed, you either got more repression, which you have today in Egypt, Abdel Fattah Sisi, or a greater centralization of power in Tunisia and in countries like Syria and Yemen, Libya and Yemen for sure. You got dysfunction and even state failure. So no, this is a complicated process. I think the Israelis somehow look at what's happened in Syria, where you had a formerly affiliated militia group, Hayat Tahrir Sham, HTS, exploit a incredibly weak Assad regime, and in a matter of weeks, produced regime change. But those circumstances are not replicable, in my judgment, in Iran. Where is the counterforce? Where is the HTS, the organized, former governing party of a northeastern province, Idlib in Syria, coherent, cohesive, backed by Turkey, on the ground?
There's no analogy, and Iran seems to be, I had no idea, like you do, obviously, but such a different country today in 2025 than, say, Syria has been, or any of these other countries that you mentioned had the revolutions from within. But what then can be Israel's ground game?
Right.
It's an interesting timing, of course, given the last year or so and what's happened in Syria, who was, friendly, obviously, with Iran. What's happened with Hezbollah, who was a proxy. What's happened, obviously, with Hamas, and how the Arab world has turned and been open to some things they haven't been in the world. I mean, the timing seems to be everything. Some people are saying this is domestic politics, as craven as it could be, that Netanyahu's power was in, being questioned. There was a vote of confidence happening. So, hey, strike Iran now. And the other part of the timing that's pretty strange is that the Trump administration was sending negotiators to meet with Iranian negotiators on a deal. And now there's all this conversation about, four-way, three-way chess or some strategy, which every time I feel like is wrong if you're talking about the Trump administration. So what about the timing, given everything I just said?
I think the timing was a function of several factors. And I think this was not the Israeli government didn't get up, last week and decide that.
No, it's been planned. Reporting is they've been planning the strike for months.
Right. So let's assume in view of what the Israelis have possessed now, after being stunned and shocked in the wake of October 7, where they lost their capacity to respond effectively, and their whole notion of deterrence was shattered on that day. Particularly over the last 6 to 8 months in the fall, they mounted these campaigns. First, Hezbollah, then you had the fall of the Assad regime. The Israelis have escalation dominance. That's a fancy word to describe the following. They control the pace, the intensity, the focus of their military activities against their adversaries. In this case, Hamas, the Houthis, and Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran. The Houthis, because of their distance and their capacity, presents a slightly different problem for the Israelis. But the Israelis, can escalate in ways that none of their adversaries can. And you watch that play out. So as one retired Israeli, I did a couple CNN interviews last night, and I said, as one retired Israeli general said to me, we're playing soccer with the Israelis. With the Iranians, the difference is they don't have a goalie. And that is a mental image of exactly what's taking place over the skies of Tehran. So, buoyed by their success against Hezbollah and even their attacks on Iran last April and October, that was factor number one. The so-called ring of fire, right? Iran's proxies had kind of burned out. Factor number two is the Trump administration. I think Netanyahu concluded rightly that he would never have a better chance to do this than now. Because when some adventurous journalist reconstructs the TikTok of what happened between that first phone call last Monday, when Trump said to Netanyahu, please, no, we don't need this. And Thursday, when Trump became an integral part of the Israeli ruse to fool the Iranians, Trump knew on Thursday, last Thursday, that Israel was going to strike overnight. And yet the administration maintained the fiction that on Sunday, Stephen Witkoff was going to go to Oman to negotiate with the Iranians. This was part of the ruse, and the Americans played a role in it. There's no doubt about it. And Trump, he loves to win. He loves success. I'm sure he's been amazed at the operational competency of the Israelis, particularly the intelligence business of launching drones internally, right? So he's riding the tiger now. Sometimes you have to fight it out, he says. But there's going to be peace. We're talking to everybody. The reality is there's not going to be peace, because the dynamic of the three major players, Israel, Iran, and the U.S., at this stage is keep on keeping on.
Right. What about the strikes themselves? How effective were they? We're reading about the target list and how effective the Israelis have been. Very effective in all kinds of different military operations throughout their history. We've seen the movies made about them, the documentaries. Much of it is at this point public. We know that they would put sticky bombs on motorcycles and kill important people, scientists. Trump obviously assassinated Soleimani when during Trump 1. But this military operation seems far more elaborate, and that they did all of those things and much more. And my understanding is the only weapon they don't have is this special kind of missile or bomb that can penetrate the Earth far enough to destroy their capabilities, nuclear capabilities. And as you just mentioned, we don't even necessarily know where they all are. And I did see Top Gun Maverick, so I know it's possible.
Right. Let's put it this way. The Iranian program is decentralized. It's redundant. It's deeply buried. And to quote Don Rumsfeld, there are also unknown unknowns. We don't know. The IAEA doesn't know. The Israelis don't know where all of these undeclared nuclear facilities are. The so-called BDA that the U.S. military does, the battle damage assessment, will take weeks, if not months, to determine the degree of damage. It appears as if there were 3 or 4 sets of possible targets. One was the decapitation strategy. And that is why Trump's willingness to play along with this ruse on Thursday, Friday was so important, because the Iranians were convinced Israel would not strike until the 6th round of those negotiations between Witkoff and the Iranian Foreign Minister Arachi had taken place in Oman. They struck 3 days before. They hit head of the Revolutionary Guard Corps, killed him. They hit the chief of staff of the general staff of the Iranian military, killed him. Several other high-ranking IRGC commanders are dead. They went after key nuclear physicists, scientists, and engineers. So there was a decapitation strategy. That was the quote-unquote shock and awe.
Right.
Something I should have understood but didn't focus on. Second was the making sure Iran played soccer with the Israelis without a goalie. They went after UAV, drone sites, ballistic missile production facilities, launchers. How many ballistic missiles Iran has left? It was estimated that they had, 2,000 to 2,500 longer range, which take, 13 minutes, maybe less, when launched to reach Israel. And then the declared main event of the operation was attacks on nuclear sites. We know that they've struck and done considerable damage at Natanz, which is the main enrichment facility. They seem to have caved the roofs based on the overhead. How much damage that has done to these advanced centrifuges, unclear. Most of the stockpile of highly enriched uranium that the Iranians have is in Isfahan. My understanding is there have been strikes in Isfahan. Whether they've damaged that stockpile or not, unclear. Fordo, which is the half-mile below ground in a mountain underground complex, where much of the enrichment and the centrifuges are, that remains largely inaccessible by air. There's been all the speculation about special ops, dropping teams of Israelis on the ground. Don't know. But I think it's fair to say they've done significant damage in 4 days. And by the way, they have no intention of letting up. And they've gone off of this South Pars gas field. They blew up the main gas depot in Iran. You got long lines of Iranians waiting at gas stations. You know the price of oil's gone up to $75, right? Gas prices are going to go up the longer this continues. All and said and done, that I think part of their dilemma is that regardless of what they set out to do, even if they said, we know we can't destroy the program, the question is, how do they now rationalize stopping?
Right.
When do the Israelis decide if they can't change the regime, they don't have the military equipment to do the big damage? When do they then decide that there's been enough to stop? And right now, I don't think there's an answer to that question.
Last question for you. So glad I get to talk to you today. Our friend Julia Yaffe posted on social media. So for those of you keeping track, Trump says he'll end the war in Ukraine in 24 hours. Putin told him to pound sand. Now the war is worse than ever. Trump said he'll solve the Gaza war. That war now worse than ever. Trump tells Bibi not to strike Iran to give him space to negotiate. Bibi strikes Iran 2 days before talks. Does it seem like world leaders respect Donald Trump. He's meeting the G7 this week, the Canadian leader, the Mexican leader, and Volodymyr Zelensky apparently is going to meet him there in Alberta as well. Does it seem like world leaders respect Trump? Do you think that Julia's?
I mean, our adversaries are playing him, and our allies, frankly, and you saw the parade in the wake of the tariffs.
Yeah.
Are whether they respect him or not, and I think the answer is no. They don't know what to make of him, and they're very worried. All of them, from Canada to Mexico, they're worried about this man. And I think we're not admired. We're not respected. There may be a good deal of fear on the part of our allies, certainly not on the part of Xi Jinping or Putin, who I think believe, even Xi Jinping believes somehow, that this whole Trump thing will alienate American allies. It will undermine American credibility, and in the long term, with respect to Taiwan and Xi's other objectives, it may actually advance Chinese interests, given the America First notion that Trump is peddling. So no, I think the situation, Peter's going to get worse before it gets worse. And Julia Yaffe is right, the three U.S. mediated negotiations are cratered. Part of it is because these are tough lifts, but part of it is because Donald Trump has no strategy.
Right.
He doesn't know how to use American leverage, and he doesn't know how to apply vinegar as well as honey.
I would say
to these negotiations.
I would say it even more basic in that even in America's greatest negotiators in negotiations, which you yourself have been involved, you've seen the best of the best, even with the best negotiators in the best circumstances, and they're never great. It's very hard to get a deal, an international deal. But in tougher circumstances, when you send negotiators whose last job was running a Honda dealership, I mean, the point is he doesn't even have good people negotiate. They don't have experience. But even if they were the best negotiators, on their way to the negotiation, Trump will post something that ruins the deal. Like, it's even if they were good negotiators, you got the guy in charge who, as you said, is so uncertain he could destroy the deal, and they aren't good negotiators. So that makes the worse that much worse. That's my thought on it.
Well, you know, Pete, our conversation, me, listen to myself, you talking, I've succeeded in depressing myself, and it's only 8:15.
Well,
I mean,
that's okay.
I don't know.
That's the norm. That's the baseline that we wake up with.
It's too early to start drinking, and it's raining outside. I'm not going to walk around. So we'll do this. We should definitely, I miss you. I miss our conversations. Your audience is lucky to have you.
Thank you, buddy.
Really,
we'll do it. We should just do a talk on life at some point soon and everything else. I'd love to just, talk to you, get outside the normal conversations that we have and talk about the things that you've seen, experienced, and learned. I think that would be really
well. One of these days on the way to Maine, we'll stop in Nyack.
I would love that.
It would be great.
Thank you, my friend. You're an American treasure. Thank you for joining me, and thanks everybody for watching.
Wonderful. Thank you.
All right. There he goes. Aaron David Miller, everybody. One of the best. So great. I hope that you will go support him on social media, follow him, and let him know that you heard him here on the show. That is all I've got for you today. If you want to listen to last night's Hangout, relive it, you can go to your email, because there should be an email there. If you're a paid subscriber with a link to it, if not, sign up. Patreon.com/PeteDominic. You can always upgrade your subscription and pay more. $2, $5, $10, $20, whatever you want to keep this engine running and keep building our community, because we certainly need it now more than ever. Take care of your mental health. Be good to yourself and everything and everyone around you. If you can, have compassion for yourself. If you can't, I'll talk to you right here tomorrow. John Carroll taking us out as he does every day. Go download his new album, johncarroll.org. Thank you, Bumblebees.
Boy, you better stand up. Well, there's a whole lot more of us who know what's right. They'll keep right on ignoring us if we